Hello, beautiful bookish people. My name is Hannah, and today I'm joined with my old history teacher, Mrs. Einfalt. Do you want to say hi?
Hello.
And today we're just going to talk about history and why it's important, books, and teaching in general.
Mm-hmm.
So my first question to get it out of the way is, did you think I was a good student?
I was thinking about that actually, and you were a great student for
Oh.
one reason, that you were engaged.
Oh.
You were engaged with not only me
Mm-hmm.
and what I was teaching, but you were also very engaged with the material.
Oh.
And that makes for a good student.
Mm-hmm.
You, everything kind of flows out of that. The rest just happens, but you were engaged, and that is why I think you fell in love with some of it.
So my next question is, we had to write a paper on why history is important, and I was wondering what was your perspective on the latter end of that question.
That is so appropriate for today,
Yes.
isn't it? I feel history is so important because that's where we learn.
Mm-hmm.
That I think of like history is like kind of like the tree. The roots of our life are like the past, the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have that foundation, then whatever comes along just blows us around. But if we have the foundation of history, we know who we are, especially as a country.
Mm-hmm.
If we know who we are, where we came from, what we're about, that keeps us solid.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you remember in history that we talked about history shows us what to do and what
Yes.
not to do.
Right.
And if you've read history, you're going to save yourself a whole lot of heartache.
Mm-hmm.
If we remember what he did, remember the history, then we have so much more confidence and trust. That's the roots that go deep.
I remember that was the first question you asked in that class of, why do you think history is important? And I remember everyone going silent.
Because my mother made me take it.
But you always brought up a good point of, like, if you know history, then you'll know what the future is, which I always thought was great.
Yeah.
So you were probably the only reason I wanted to visit Martin Luther's house
Oh,
when I was in Germany.
So excited that you did that.
And when I went to Germany, I couldn't help but think about you because of how much passion
Yeah.
you had for the subject.
Yeah.
And I was curious why you made Thunderstorm in the Church such a big part of the curriculum.
I think for me, my understanding of history is that Martin Luther is so pivotal. So pivotal, especially in American history, but I think in history in general, the church had become so systematized and corrupted, and he came along and said, you know what, it's me and God, and his word is my guide.
Mm-hmm.
And that just changed everything, changed people's way of thinking. It changed how our founding fathers thought about America.
Right.
It's about we need to go with what our conscience believes. And I just am so fascinated. He was an incredible man.
Mm-hmm.
He was a hypochondriac. He had a bad temper, but he just loved God and was so passionate about him. And he's a fascinating person.
Mm-hmm.
Thunderstorm in the Church, I love it that it's a story.
Mm-hmm.
Written as a story.
Right.
But yet you come away going, I know this guy. I really feel like I know this man. So that's kind of why I picked that, because I think it's pivotal in history and it was written so well.
Mm-hmm.
And children's stories, I think some of the children's biographies are so much better because you get the bigger picture of who that person is.
That was actually a question I was thinking about coming up here, is you oftentimes used abridged versions of classics or children's versions.
Mm-hmm.
I was always wondering why you did that versus the actual Odyssey.
That's a really good question. I think students get bogged down.
Oh.
And we're cruising through books.
Sure.
In my classes, they only have 3 weeks to read
Mm-hmm.
a whole book.
Right.
So I want them to get the big picture of who this person is, a complete good picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that children's books do a good job of pulling that
Certain
out.
elements out
Mhm.
that you should know.
That you know that person.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you may not get to read all the details and the ins and outs, but I think you come away with the heartbeat of that person.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
does that answer?
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of my questions is, what is the hardest part about teaching, and do you have any advice for someone like me who wants to become a teacher?
Who wants to become one? I was thinking about that. I think for me personally, the hardest part of teaching has to do with my personality.
Okay.
In that I tend to be very sensitive, and when a student is hurting, I hurt. And so sometimes I give too much latitude.
Oh.
I think more students are broken, hurting, struggling with learning issues,
Sure.
dyslexia, dysgraphia. So school and learning overall is harder. So for me, the hardest part is finding the balance of keeping them accountable, but showing mercy and grace
Right.
at the same time. It's a fine line to navigate between both. So all the rest is just fun.
Okay.
That's the hard part. So I think thinking of advice for somebody who wants to be a teacher, you have to know you're called. I think. Know that this is where your gifting and abilities lie. Because some days when you are ready to pull your hair out, if you know this is for me, then it'll be okay.
Okay. A more lighthearted question.
Okay.
Do you remember that time I called you mom in class? And was it as embarrassing as I remember it to be?
You know what? I don't.
Okay.
Because you are one of many, many.
Who have called you mom?
Yeah. So don't feel bad.
Okay.
So when you said that, she did that? Yeah, this one did it, and this one did it, and this one, so it's normal.
Okay. I have this old copy of Beowulf.
Where did you get that?
It's from a former student.
Wow.
And I was wondering if you could give it a little look through to see what you thought the student was like.
Oh my goodness. And it wasn't you, right?
No.
My goodness. It's somebody who's paying attention. Wow. Amazing notes. Oh, it's someone who really read this well.
And doodled.
And doodled. Story within a story. Boy, it really was somebody paying attention. It's got to be a girl. Is it you?
It is.
It is you. Because I remember this. I remember this. You know, when students doodle,
Okay.
their mind is much more engaged.
Really?
So it never bothers me when you doodle.
I thought you were going to be like, oh no, this person did
No.
not like Beowulf. They were not paying attention.
I mean, look at the things you highlighted, and it's excellent. Excellent. It just makes me, look at this, oh snap. No, I don't mind you doodling.
Oh, okay.
That's a good thing, actually. So if you doodle,
Okay.
your mind's taking in more.
I don't know. I thought you were going to drag me.
No, I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
What time period and also book was your favorite to teach?
My favorite book, I'll answer that first,
Okay.
is Screwtape Letters.
Oh.
Because I love the moral inversion. It is so appropriate for today. Satan doesn't use the big things.
Right.
He uses the teeny tiny little steps. My favorite era? That's really hard. It probably has to be the Reformation.
Really?
It's probably the Reformation. I just love that whole time period.
Well, so much happened during that time.
So much happened, and it was a breeding ground for America.
And ideas.
And ideas and thinking and freedom.
Right. But, kind of a fun question. Was I your favorite student?
Well, the fact that when you texted me and said, could I do this, your face popped up right away.
Oh.
So, no, that's a pretty good, you were one of my favorites because you were engaged.
Oh.
You were there, you came in ready to learn, you had all your stuff done. I don't even hardly remember you ever having to say, well, I didn't get that done, or unless you were sick or something was wrong, then you can't help that.
Right.
But you were a great student.
Aww.
And I'm so thankful. So what was your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book that we read, probably Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
I think about that one the most.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. Shakespeare, keep reading him. He is so fun and so snarky and love it.
Could you tell that I definitely looked up Beowulf on SparkNotes for understanding it?
No,
Oh, really?
I couldn't tell
Wow.
because I don't mind if kids do that.
Okay. I always thought that would be a pet peeve for teachers.
Well, sometimes it is, but the reality of today is they're going to do it. And sometimes I think of it this way. If you've got the bigger picture, you've got the frame from SparkNotes, then whatever you read as you go back through, you're able to fill in that picture. And it's up to you to fill in and make the best picture possible. So no, in this day and age, no, it doesn't bother me. If you still do the work and go back and read it.
So, I don't know if you've seen the Mission Impossible movie, the new one that just came out. But there is a dilemma that Tom Cruise goes through where he says, like, you can either save 1 life or 1,000 lives. And I remember sitting in your classroom during World War II, like, section of the time period, and you asked the class, like, would you drop the atomic bomb to save the world, essentially? And I always, like, when I was watching that movie, I was like, no, you save the millions. You don't save the 1 life from a terrorist, you save the bomb from being blown up. It was just really cool to have that, like, little aspect of, like, your teaching come back to me in the movie theater, because I think it's so relevant, even in movies, in Tom Cruise movies.
Yeah, that's encouraging. That's encouraging. And during that time of having to drop that bomb, that was not an easy decision for Truman. He had to really think through the numbers, and it came out to, if we went to war, what did I say? If we had to take Japan by war, it meant like 1 million would die.
Right.
But if we dropped an atomic bomb,
10,000.
Yeah. And so you look at that and you go, atomic bomb is horrible. But that's, Yay, I'm glad you remembered that. Yay!
Well, yes, that's all my questions. So thank you so much for letting me do this.
Thank you. It made me think again.
It's really enjoyable to come see you again.
Oh, thank you. And God go before you as you keep doing school, and maybe you'll be impacting students' lives someday.
Oh, thank you.
With Shakespeare. Right. I think he'll use you. Yay!
History is important because it helps us understand the present. If we listen to what history has to say, we can come to an understanding of the past that will tell us much about the problems we face now. The more we know about the past, the better prepared we are for the future. And that was the last sentence that I wrote for Mrs. Einfalt back in 2015 for my paper of why history is important. Getting to do this series was one of the reasons I wanted to start Book 2, was to reconnect with these old teachers and let them have a place to speak about education and why it's important. So I'm really grateful to have an audience and amazing teachers who let me come to their houses and talk to them about books. This is the type of content I know I made for myself, but I'm so thankful that y'all, as viewers, seem to enjoy it just as much as I do. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Keep reading and all that jazz.